everybody, this is Mrs. Cotter. I hope you all got your packets. If you haven't, packets are going to be given out Monday through Wednesday, starting at 10 a.m. and it ends at 6 p.m. They'll have little bags with your math packet in it, and it should look something like this. Miss Fifield already did week 1, day 1, and I'm going to do week 1, day 2. So it should look like that. The first part is fluency. And it says fill in the missing numbers. And we've been working on multiplication a whole lot. So you just have to fill in the boxes. So 2 times what equals 12? What times 3 equals 27? And it's all multiplication. So I'm going to show this to you so you can check your answers. If you haven't, pause the video, cover up the answers, and then you can check your answers. Here are your answers. All right, and let's go down to part 2. The question says, write the multiplication and division fact family that goes with each array. Use the arrays to find each product if you need to. Remember, that word product right there, that means the answer of a multiplication problem. And I put in the boxes multiplication and division. So you have to find 2 multiplication problems and 2 division problems. So in multiplication, we have to remember that word commutative property because that's going to help you for your multiplication problems. So let's look at the arrays first. Now we usually see arrays with circles, but this is very similar. We're just seeing it with squares. And you can think of this with area. So what I did is I counted the boxes on one side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I wrote it on the side. And then I counted the top boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I know when I'm finding area that I can do 6 times 7, and you should know what that multiplication problem is. That equals 42. So I wrote 7 times 6 equals 42, and then I use that commutative property and just switch the 2 numbers around. And that's 6 times 7 equals 42. Now for my division problem, it's a little bit trickier, but if you remember that poster in our room, the bigger number, the total, always goes first. So let's look. 42 divided by 6 equals 7. And then we just switch the 6 and the 7 around. We still have our total always first. 42 divided by 7 equals 6. And they look very similar, but they are different problems. Let's look at B. Very similar, but different numbers. So I counted the first boxes on the side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I wrote 8 on the side to help me. And then I counted the top boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I wrote on the top. So remember, like what we said with area, we multiply 8 times 7. And you should know that multiplication problem. 8 times 7 equals 56. And then we're using that commutative property again. I wrote on the side to remember. So I just switched the 8 and the 7 around. And that gives me 7 times 8 equals 56. Now we're going on to our division problem. Remember, the total always goes first in a division problem. So 56 divided by 7 equals 8. And I'm going to still keep that total in the front, but I'm just switching that 7 and the 8 around. 56 divided by 8 equals 7. All right, and that's done with the first page. Now we're going to go on to the second page. Let's read the question. So we have a picture here of some fish, and they're in a tank. It says, suppose there are 4 tanks and 3 fish in each tank. The total number of the fish in this situation can be expressed as 4 times 3 equals 12. That 4 shows us how many tanks there are. The 3 shows us how many fish are in each tank, and the 12 is telling me the total fish all together. Part A gives us a division problem, and it wants us to describe it. says describe what it meant in this situation by 12 divided by 3 equals 4. So before I started this question, I thought, what does a 12 represent? What's that 12 tell me? Well, the 12 tells me that there's 12 fish altogether. The 3 means that there are 3 fish divided into how many tanks? 4. So that gives me that 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 tanks. So I just wrote that out. There are 12 fish total, and 3 fish are divided into 4 tanks. So I basically just wrote out the division problem, but I just explained what each of those numbers are. And you can write a different way. It doesn't have to be exactly my words. It can be however you want to write it, as long as it makes sense and it matches a division problem. Let's look at part B. It gives us another way. It says, describe what it meant in this situation by 12 divided by 4 equals 3. So it's a division problem. They just switched that 4 and the 3 around. So again, I'm going to think about what each number means. Okay, so 12, I know there's 12 fish total. There are 4 tanks, and there are 3 fish in each tank. So I wrote, again, there are 12 fish total, and 4 tanks, and 3 fish are divided into each tank. So I just wrote the numbers, but I explained which each number is in order. So I talked about 12 first, then I talked about 4, and then I talked about 3. Whereas in part A, I talked about 12, then 3, and then 4. So you kind of want to go in the order of how the problem is written out. And remember, you can write it however you want as long as it makes sense. And also you can see that I use those words divided. Divided. That is really helpful to know that I'm talking about a division problem, because if they don't give me the division problem, and they tell me to write out the division problem, I should be able to write it out just by reading this statement. And that word divided can help me. All right, let's look at the daily closing. It says, write a story problem to match this expression, 56 divided by 8. So this is a little bit of a fun one. You get to write your own story, and it can be about anything. So I use bows and students. So I wrote an order. I said there are a total of 56 bows, because I remember that in a division problem, the total is always first. There are a total of 56 bows. I divided the bows between 8 students. How many bows did each student get? So I'm starting with that 56. I know 56 is my total, so I wrote there are a total of 56 bows. And then again, I use that word divided because I see a division sign. And I divided it between 8 students. How many bows did each student get? And I wrote 7 bows because I know 56 divided by 8 equals 7, or I know that 8 times 7 equals 56. And for your story, you can write whatever you want. It can be bows, it can be basketballs, soccer balls, it can be PlayStations, whatever you want it to be. All right, and you can write whatever story you want. And that's it. That's week 1, day 2. All right, make sure you're working on your packet, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.